The day democracy stared down the Governor-General, the dismissal of Gough Whitlam. Gough Whitlam was a reformer whose sudden removal from office on the 11th of November 1975 exposed a constitutional crisis, a bitter partisan fight, and a swirl of conspiracy that still divides Australia. In 1970, Whitlam's Labour government arrived with a radical agenda: universal health care, recognition of Indigenous land rights, withdrawal from Vietnam, and a rapid program of social and cultural change. But by 1975, a cascade of controversies had hardened opposition in Parliament and on the streets. Two scandals are central: the loans affair, where ministers sought unconventional overseas finance for national development, and the revelations that ministers had misled Parliament, forcing high-profile resignations and eroding trust. At the core of the drama was the Senate. Under Australia's constitution, the Senate can defer or block supply. In 1975, an opposition-controlled Senate refused to pass appropriation bills, effectively threatening to shut the government's access to public funds unless Whitlam called a general election. Whitlam argued that he had a mandate from the House and refused. The stalemate created an extraordinary pressure cooker: public protests, intense media scrutiny, and frantic private negotiations. Watching from within the palace corridors of power was Governor-General Sir John Kerr, the Queen's representative with reserved constitutional powers seldom, if ever, used in modern times. Kerr had been given confidential legal advice that, in extreme circumstances, he could dismiss a prime minister who could not secure supply. But the use of that power, without warning, was almost unimaginable, and it would require him to break a political covenant of trust. On the 11th of November, after weeks of crisis, Kerr acted. He dismissed Whitlam, appointed Malcolm Fraser, leader of the opposition, as caretaker prime minister on condition Fraser secure supply and call an election, and then dissolved both houses. The nation watched in disbelief as Whitlam, blindsided, declared the dismissal an affront to democracy, and delivered the line that still echoes: "Well, may we say God save the Queen, because nothing will save the Governor-General." The December election returned a landslide for Fraser. Conspiracy theories arrived like tidal waves. Whitlam and many supporters suspected foreign interference. The United States had watched Whitlam's foreign policy, his criticisms of American involvement in Southeast Asia, and debates about joint defense facilities like Pine Gap with worrying. Declassified U.S. documents and diplomatic cables show American officials were concerned about the instability in Canberra and monitored events closely. Journalists and historians later uncovered meetings and communications between Australian and foreign officials that fueled suspicion. But the evidence for direct CIA involvement in orchestrating the dismissal remains lacking. No smoking gun document has been produced to prove the United States engineered Kerr's move. What is clear and documented: U.S. officials were alarmed. Intelligence channels reported developments. And some American diplomats suspected a coup might be conceivable. What is also indisputable is Kerr's failure to inform Whitlam that dismissal was a possibility, his private consultations with advisors, and his decision to exercise reserve powers without prior parliamentary warning. Those decisions, not a proven foreign plot, are the concrete actions that changed history. The dismissal left deep wounds. It prompted debates about the reserve powers of the Governor-General, triggered legal and parliamentary inquiries, and hardened political divisions for years. It also forced Australia to confront questions about sovereignty, democratic norms, and the opaque relationships between elected leaders, vice-regal officeholders, and foreign powers. Historically, the dismissal is neither simple treachery nor clean constitutional necessity. It is a collision of personal misjudgment, parliamentary strategy, and geopolitical anxiety, an episode where the machinery of democracy was tested and, for a time, faltered. Decades later, the facts are clearer. Conspiracies remain partly unresolved, and the story endures as a cautionary tale. When constitutional conventions break down and secrecy fills the gaps, democracy itself can be made suddenly fragile.